Hello, and welcome to this week's edition of Tax in 10 with me, Rachel de Souza, and Andrew Robbins. We are both tax partners in RSM's London office and have a wealth of experience in dealing with a wide range of private client matters. Your feedback is valuable to us, so do keep it coming, especially if you have thoughts on any topics you would like us to cover. You can contact us by email, and our email addresses are at the bottom of your screen.
Rachel, the dust has now settled a bit following the March budget, but I have to confess that after the Chancellor's announcement on pensions, I'm still feeling a bit confused. I know I'm not alone in this because clients have been asking me what the budget changes mean for their pension pots. So I feel I could really do with some help on this. Now, luckily, since you're a pensions tax specialist, I am confident that you're going to be able to give me all of the answers. So, Rachel, what on earth is going on?
Yes, the announcements in the budget were a bit of a surprise, but equally they were a welcome surprise to the majority of pensions advisors. But before we get to that, I think I need to give you a bit of a background and a bit of a summary of what the position was so that we can work out what has changed and what that means for you and your clients. Now, back in 2006, we had what was termed as pension simplification. We might come back to question whether it was simplification or not, but anyway, the post-2006 landscape was designed to make pension savings easier to understand, because remember, a vast number of the population do actually put money into their pension. So we had two new concepts in 2006. One was the annual allowance, and the second one was the lifetime limit. Now, the annual allowance was simply the amount of contributions that could be made with tax relief in any tax year. And the lifetime limit was designed to be an upper limit to take account of growth in the investments, and above which penal charges would apply. Now, successive chancellors have made some quite substantial changes to the pensions regime, and consequently, I would say that it is now hugely complicated and does need another overhaul. However, the changes announced last month will be helpful.
Okay, so as I understand it, the changes mean that from the 6th of April 23, I can now make tax relieved contributions of up to £60,000 a year to my pension. I mean, that's simple, I get that. But what's the impact of the abolition of this lifetime allowance? And why have Labour immediately found this so controversial that they're saying that they're going to cancel the change and reintroduce it again?
Okay, let's come back to the potential reintroduction of the lifetime allowance under a future Labour government. So I think we need to understand the impact of its abolition first. So the reality is that the lifetime allowance is likely to have no impact for the majority of the population who earn an average salary. But it has a large impact on high earners. And of course, high earners include senior doctors and consultants in the NHS who get a lot of media coverage. So if my contributions grow beyond the lifetime allowance, in simple terms, it means that I will pay a penal tax charge of at least 55% on that excess when I draw the funds, or indeed, as the rules work, on my 75th birthday. And the argument has always been, well, you are encouraging me to save, but you will penalise me if I'm saving too successfully and such that my savings have grown beyond, this arbitrary lifetime allowance, and therefore this can't be right. Now, I should also mention that a lot of obviously NHS personnel are in final salary schemes. They're a different sort of beast to contribution schemes. The effect of the lifetime allowance is the same, or the annual amount, but the method of calculating that is different. So Now we have the abolition of the lifetime allowance, and therefore I don't have to worry about being penalised for saving, as encouraged by the government, and for the investment growth, which is, of course, outside my control.
Hmm. And that all sounds very positive, but it is only one side of the story, which is why Labour have raised objections, I think. As I understand it, the most obvious objection to the change is that it really does only benefit the seriously wealthy. By definition, the lifetime limit only has an impact if you've got a pension pot of over £1 million. So either you will need to have stuffed in a lot of contributions over the years, or to have been spectacularly successful with your investment strategy. And in either case, is it really a good use of taxpayers' money to reduce the tax burden on those excessive pots of wealth? Now, of course, that's an ideological point, but I think there's also a practical one, which is that the policy is specifically being linked with doctors retiring early, but it doesn't only apply to doctors. And Labour have made the point that this is a really expensive way to benefit a small number of people working in the NHS, because most of the beneficiaries of the policy will have jobs like bankers or lawyers, where public sympathy for their pension plight is likely to be pretty limited. And from that point of view, it does seem to be sort of an oddly targeted or non-targeted giveaway.
That's all very well, but Labour's solution of bringing back the lifetime allowance leaves us back with the flawed position we started with. Now, the pensions industry have said for a long time that it makes no sense to cap both the contributions and the size of the pension pot, and I agree with that. So, would it be better to cap the annual allowance? Again, I don't think that solves the problem, as most people contribute smaller amounts when they are younger and are just starting out. And really, they only have the ability to contribute more significant sums once they've risen up the salary scale. So, you need a high annual cap to be able to make those larger contributions at a later date when you have the financial leeway to do so.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, because it sounds like maybe the logical solution would be to reintroduce a lifetime allowance, but with uncapped contributions along the way. That way you could get your tax relief on the way in, but you could shape your contributions based on earning capacity, as you just said. But any perceived excess within the pot would then be taxed when you're older. You know what? I think we've just solved the pension crisis.
I think you've just churned the problem around and haven't solved anything at all. Anyway, regardless, it definitely doesn't address the question of what people should do in the short term.
No. And if your pension pot is close to the old LTA, or you've already exceeded it, then under the new rules, if I understand correctly, you can continue to contribute, and pension contributions carry on being tax efficient. The problem is if a future Labour government reintroduces an LTA, we don't know if they'll provide any form of protection, which means that if you put those extra contributions in above the limit, will they be penalised when the LT comes back in? Will you get tax relief potentially of 45% this year and a tax charge of 55% next year? They haven't said, and at the moment, I think the answer presumably is we don't know. So my worry is that I don't see how any advisor can know what will happen. And it's one of those unfortunate circumstances where we're being asked the question, but all we can do is set out the issues to inform clients rather than giving them a clear steer.
I think that's right. I think that's right. The landscape is now quite unclear, and each case will have to be looked at individually. But certainly, I think the one thing we can say is it's not worth sitting on your hands and doing nothing. If you're in that position, do speak to your advisor and get a recommendation. Anyway, speaking of recommendations, have you got something for us this week, Andrew?
Very smoothly done.
No.
I do. I may have mentioned before that it's always been my ambition when I grow up that I want to be Keanu Reeves. So I'm really happy to report that there is a new film out which might as well be called Keanu Reeves Punching People.
Oh.
A lot. John Wick Chapter 4 is in cinemas now and is amazing. It is almost 3 hours long, but it doesn't feel it. And it's sort of balletic. It's beautifully produced. It looks amazing. The violence in it is astonishing. Everything from having fights with cars through nunchucks, swords, punches, you name it, he does it. Brilliant, really good fun. Just if you want some mindless violence and escapism, John Wick Chapter 4 absolutely fits the bill.
Okay, I think that's one I'll be giving a miss. But thanks for the recommendation anyway.
You don't know what you're missing.
I think I do. Anyway, thanks everyone for listening. Please do let us have your comments or any feedback you may have. And we can be contacted on andrew.robbins@rsmuk.com or rachel.d'souza@rsmuk.com. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.